Imagine a kindly old man who treated neighbors with herbs, bragged about surviving the Titanic, and seemed like the last person you'd suspect of anything sinister. But behind his gentle smile, Hubert Pilčík was hiding a nightmare. Between 1948 and 1951, he turned from trusted smuggler to one of Czechoslovakia's most dangerous killers, leaving behind a trail of mystery, torture, and death. And the strangest part? Even after his capture, the secret surrounding Pilčík only got darker. After World War II, Czechoslovakia became a place where borders were guarded, movement was restricted, and desperation pushed many to look for ways out. Pilčík saw opportunity in this. By presenting himself as someone who could guide people across the frontier into Germany, he built a secret business. To some, he was a savior, offering what seemed like a chance at freedom. To others, he was just another smuggler trying to profit from the dangerous times. But Pilčík's smuggling wasn't limited to people. Neighbors would later discover that he had quietly stolen from homes nearby, taking valuables while still maintaining his spotless reputation. His polite demeanor and herbal remedies masked a side of him that thrived on deception and theft. What made Pilčík even more dangerous was what he kept hidden inside his own home. Behind closed doors, he stored an arsenal that went far beyond the needs of a smuggler. He had weapons from different countries, a British Sten submachine gun, an Austrian Roster pistol, a Czechoslovak CZ handgun, a revolver, knives, and even a baton reinforced with metal. It was clear he was prepared not just for border crossings, but for violence. This double life, respected herbalist by day and armed criminal by night, laid the foundation for something far darker. Because for Pilčík, smuggling was never just about money. It became the perfect cover for murder. One of Pilčík's most infamous crimes began with a woman named Renata Bally. Before the government seized her photography studio, she had crossed paths with him through her work and even recommended him as a smuggler to others. When her own life collapsed and she needed to escape, she turned to Pilčík, trusting that he could lead her and her family to safety. On March 6, 1951, Renata, her father Emmanuel, and her young niece Daniela prepared for what they believed was a journey toward freedom. Pilčík promised to guide them as far as the Lipovka Grove, where another associate would take them the rest of the way. But the promise was nothing more than a trap. Emmanuel was the first victim. Pilčík struck him from behind with a baton, poured oil over his body, and set him on fire. The autopsy later revealed chilling details. Emmanuel's blood showed signs of boiling, meaning he was still alive when the flames consumed him. Renata's fate was just as grim. Pilčík lured her into the woods, stunned her with a sandbag, strangled her with a rope, and buried her in a sandpit. Months later, children collecting sand to clean kitchen pots stumbled upon her remains. Investigators struggled to identify her until a dentist recognized a unique inlay he had once fitted in her teeth. But the cruelty didn't end there. Daniela, the youngest of the group, was kept alive, though her survival was far from merciful. Pilčík chained her inside a pigsty, confining her to a wooden board. To muffle her screams, he forced a strange double-wall box over her head. For weeks, she was starved, abused, and manipulated into writing letters to relatives, pretending that her family had reached Germany safely. Some neighbors noticed a frail girl wandering the yard when Pilčík's wife wasn't home, but no one suspected the horror she was living through. This single case revealed the full scale of Pilčík's brutality. It wasn't just about robbery or smuggling gone wrong. He had crossed into calculated torture and murder, targeting entire families who trusted him with their lives. The Bally case was only the beginning of what investigators would uncover. As they dug deeper into Pilčík's life, more names surfaced, each one tied to disappearances that had long puzzled families and authorities. Among the victims were engineer Lubomir Kraus and his wife Eva. Their disappearance had gone largely unnoticed until Eva's burned body was found in the countryside near Mariensk Glas. At first, the remains seemed unidentifiable, but a search of Pilčík's home revealed suitcases filled with the couple's belongings. The discovery connected him directly to their deaths, suggesting that the Bally murders were not an isolated event, but part of a larger pattern. Another chilling case was that of businessman Jan Horka. He had trusted Pilčík enough to stay at his home, unaware that he was living with the man who would end his life. Investigators later found Horka's personal documents and even his artificial teeth hidden among Pilčík's possessions. What made this case particularly unsettling was a strange coincidence that another man with the exact same name had also tried to cross the border. That second Horka was poor and survived the journey. The wealthy one, however, was killed, showing how Pilčík targeted those who carried valuables worth stealing. By this point, police suspected that the number of Pilčík's victims stretched far beyond confirmed cases. His house was a grim archive of missing people. Clothes, jewelry, and half-burned papers scattered through his belongings and buried in his yard. For investigators, each discovery raised the same haunting question. Just how many lives had he destroyed under guise of helping people escape? By late 1951, suspicion around Pilčík was growing too heavy to ignore. Investigators looking into Renata Bali's disappearance followed a trail of testimonies that eventually led straight to his home. Neighbors knew him only by the nickname Uncle, but when confronted with mounting evidence, relatives of the victims pointed to him as the last person seen with their loved ones. On September 6th, police surrounded his neighborhood in Senec. 2 officers approached his house under the simple pretense of replacing an electric clock. Once inside, they arrested Pilčík without a struggle. What they uncovered next left even seasoned investigators shaken. The house was overflowing with personal items that didn't belong to him. Suitcases, documents, clothes, jewelry, even burned fragments of papers buried in the garden. Each object told the same story. Someone had vanished, and Pilčík had kept what was left behind. It was a chilling trophy collection that suggested far more victims than anyone could confirm. The most disturbing discovery was Daniela, Renata's young niece. She was found alive, but in horrifying condition. Malnourished, traumatized, and barely able to stand, she confirmed the nightmare she had endured. The weeks of abuse, imprisonment, and forced deception. Her testimony revealed details that proved Pilčík's crimes were not the work of a desperate smuggler, but a sadistic predator. Despite overwhelming evidence, Pilčík refused to cooperate with authorities. He mocked investigators, inventing confessions for murders that never happened, while denying responsibility for others they had already confirmed. At times, he even insisted that some of his victims were still alive abroad. His games added confusion, but the mountain of proof left little doubt. With Pilčík in custody, authorities expected a trial that would expose the full extent of his crimes. Instead, what followed only deepened the mystery. Just 3 days after his arrest, the story took an unexpected turn. On September 9, 1951, Pilčík was found dead in his cell at the Bory prison in Plzeň. The official explanation was that he took his own life. Guards reported that he had fashioned a noose out of 2 handkerchiefs and hanged himself during the night. But from the very beginning, the details didn't quite add up. The handkerchiefs weren't tied fully around his neck, only across the front, which led some to question whether he could have taken his own life in that way. Observers argued it seemed less like a self-inflicted death and more like circumstances that didn't quite match the official account. Rumors quickly spread that Pilčík had been beaten by guards. Others suggested he had been silenced to prevent him from revealing secrets that went beyond murder. After all, he wasn't just any criminal. He had special permits that allowed him to move freely in border zones where ordinary citizens were restricted. That kind of privilege hinted at deeper connections. Instead of bringing closure, Pilčík's death created more questions than answers. Had he truly taken his own life out of despair? Or was someone making sure he never stood trial, keeping hidden the truths he might have exposed? In the years that followed, Pilčík's case became entangled with whispers of espionage and secret government operations. The most persistent theory linked him to Operation Stone, a covert campaign run by the Czechoslovak state security in the early 1950s. Operation Stone was designed as a trap. Agents pretended to smuggle defectors across the border to Germany, only to lure them into ambushes where they were arrested or executed. The operation relied on deception, hidden networks, and people with unusual access to restricted areas. And Pilčík fit the profile. He had official permits to roam the borderlands freely, an uncommon privilege during that era of tight surveillance. Some claimed he used a supposed role in the operation as a cover for his killings, moving through forests and villages without suspicion. Others suggested that the state security itself may have shielded him, turning a blind eye to his crimes as long as he remained useful. Whether these rumors held any truth has never been proven, but they added another layer of unease to his story. Pilčík was no longer seen merely as a brutal killer. He became a shadowy figure linked to secret police, spies, and the hidden machinery of Cold War politics. The question remained, was he an independent predator who happened to exploit his privileges, or a man caught between murder and espionage, serving powers far more dangerous than himself? Hubert Pilčík's life remains one of the darkest mysteries in Czechoslovak history. On the surface, he was a harmless locksmith herbalist, and even a man who claimed to have survived the Titanic. Beneath that image, he was a cunning smuggler, a torturer, and a murderer whose victims may number far beyond those confirmed. Even after his death, the questions only multiplied. Was his passing truly self-inflicted, or were there circumstances that didn't add up? Did he act alone, or was he unknowingly caught up in a secret government operation? The overlap of crime and espionage makes it difficult to separate the man from the legend. Some evidence suggests he had accomplices and support, while other details point to a disturbed individual exploiting the chaos of post-war Czechoslovakia. His crimes left scars not only on the families of his victims, but also on the nation's collective memory, a haunting reminder that appearances can be dangerously deceiving. In the end, Pilčík's story is a chilling reflection on trust, deception, and the hidden darkness that can lurk behind the most ordinary faces. And while justice in the courtroom was never fully served, the tales of his crimes continue to fascinate and horrify, proving that some truths are more terrifying than fiction. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.